All right, so why do we say that fear is a bad motivator for starting a pantry? Um, First off, because we do a lot of foolish things when we're afraid. When fear is what's driving us, our thought process isn't clear, we do things that we normally wouldn't do with sound reasoning. Yes, fear, when you hear about everything that's going on, it can motivate you, but it should only motivate you. It shouldn't be why your actions are carried through. I don't know, most of us remember Y2K and the big hype that came up with that. When Y2K happened, a lot of people were prepping for it about 2 years before. And when it didn't happen, people were shocked. They were astounded. And we heard stories, and one specific that jumps out to mind is a man spent his entire retirement, $50,000, on MREs and foods like that would have long shelf life, but weren't exactly desirable when you weren't in an emergency situation. So, and for us, we were already doing some food storage, but we really hadn't gotten into the big whole. We had just started to understand food storage in the past 3 years prior to Y2K. It did motivate us to get some things, and some of it was out of fear. And those things that were out of fear are things like Spam, canned ham. You know what? When Y2K didn't happen, we did not end up eating the Spam and the ham. Okay, and that's just a small example. But if you're basing your entire food pantry out of fear, you're prone to make mistakes. So you need to step back logically and decide what it is that your goal is. Why are you preparing? Are you doing it because you realize that food can be expensive later down the road? I mean, more than it is now. Are you preparing simply for a catastrophe? Even if you are just preparing for that darkest of times when the power grid goes down, or World War III happens and the Lord hasn't returned yet, you still want to prepare with calmness and rationale. You need to determine what it is each month that you will need to be able to have accessible. How long is your food pantry that you're after, for? Are you going for 3 months, 6 months, a year, 10 years? All these play into what you will store. You also need to determine to change your life enough that you're able to use your pantry as your store. That each month or each time you go, you're preparing food, you're preparing it out of your pantry. For example, and I'm just going to go small scale here so that the numbers are easy to comprehend. But let's say that each month you're going to use 12 jars of spaghetti sauce, okay? And so that if you are going to have a food pantry for 2 months, you need 24 jars of spaghetti sauce, whether it's store-bought or home canned. Let's just say that you buy it from the store. So when your food pantry is all set up, you've got 2 months worth of food, and you go to get that spaghetti sauce, you take the front spaghetti sauce, the oldest, so say use 2 jars per meal, then you need to replace it. Okay, there's the important thing, and it's sometimes you can't. We've been in that situation. That's where that's why our food pantry is depleted. But for years we didn't do that. For years we did the rotation and we kept up on it. But the food pantry was there when we needed it, and it didn't get replenished at one point. So that's life. That happens. But if you're really in a point where you've built your food pantry up and you want to keep it replenished and you're able to, then you need to make it this like second nature to you. That's what you do. Whatever you use, you replace. Because if you don't, if you've got your food pantry, sorry, I got a kink in my neck. I've been dealing with this thing for off and on for weeks now. If your food pantry is for 2 months and you're not replenishing it, you'll be shocked that when you go to look at what you've got on the shelf, that it's gone. I mean, because 8 weeks go by really fast, as well as 2 years or 10 years. It's amazing how fast time goes, and you've got to be on top of your food pantry as you work it in order to keep it productive. Someone had said in a comment, and it's true because I used to hear this all the time, your food pantry should be your grocery store. That's where you go shopping. Once your food pantry is set up for whatever, food pantries they're not just, I'm telling you what, if you're not a end of the world thinker, things like that, a food pantry for just anything is a major deal. When I say anything, I'm referring to an illness, job loss, whatever the case. You know, you have an emergency that requires more of your funds going there, and you know you can't afford to buy food, or at least not buy food like you're used to in your pantry set up. That's why it's a grocery store. But when you're able to and you're using that grocery store, you need to replenish it regularly. You know, for us, like I said, we bulked up for years. That was just how we were able to do it. That's what we felt best. But because we cooked everything from scratch, it was necessary. For example, I knew that exactly 35 minimum pounds of flour would fit in a bucket. I knew exactly how many buckets a month I would go through. And so each time I would empty a bucket, I was convicted. It was a drive for me to refill that bucket, okay? I wouldn't, you know, like buy flour and put it in the bucket as I was using it. You know, like I say, I used 5 pounds out of the 35-pound bucket. I wouldn't go and get 5 pounds and put it back in, because then I wouldn't be rotating the food. I would create a new bucket. And so as I was using one, I was filling another. And you really need to sit down and determine what you go through each week, each member of your family, what you would need to have in your pantry to what you know, the amount of food you're used to, and then determine also, because this is where a lot of people need to start, bare bones minimum. Okay, the absolute least you can get by on and feed your family, and not have everyone feel like they're not being fed enough for a week, and then pump it up to 2 weeks. And little by little, you will see that your pantry is being stocked. But the thing is you need to sit down and take time to figure that out. You know, how much do you averagely put into a meal? You know, if you're making spaghetti, or let's say you're making I'm trying to think of something, you know, chili, or you're making some type of soup or something. You need to break it down, and then when, let's say, you know, you get that figured out, then reduce it again, just so you get an idea of how much, with the littlest you can get by on, how you can start to see some movement forward in your pantry. And then you can, as you get that movement, you've set your time span. What's the least amount of food you want to see on your pantry shelves to get your family through a uncomfortable situation? Then you can pump it up a little bit more. And I'm telling you what, I mean, this is so true. Pantry stocking is addictive, especially if you garden, because it's unlimited the amount you can put in your pantry per season for vegetables. And if you are hunting or butchering your own, it almost becomes unlimited. But that's not, I mean, that is not reality for so many people. And that's what I want to encourage, is the people that don't believe that they can do this because they have to buy everything from the grocery store. You can do it. And it's just going to take more creativity. It's going to take more restriction. It's going to take more discipline. It's going to take more ingenuity. And then you need to set these guidelines, though, for yourself, that if you are stocking, you've never stocked and you're just starting, or you're redoing it, that you plan on helping, you know, your situation. Maybe it's going to be gardening next season, so that between now and next gardening season, you're able to put up 6 months worth of stuff. And then come next gardening season, maybe you can put up a year's worth of stuff. So now you have got a full year and a half. I mean, it can move that quickly once the ball gets rolling. The other thing is, if you can't garden, you can go and you can pick apples from the orchard. There are lots of you pick places that you can go to. They're harder if you're buying organic. We've got one organic orchard that we can go to. And though apples are not genetically modified, they still spray them. So, you know, it is definitely more restrictive for those of us that want to be organic. But if that's not an issue, you know, you need to know there are options out there. So I don't know, I guess that's it. I better get to work. My husband's wondering what I'm doing here today because I haven't washed any jars. And we all started singing the song, "We're so lonesome we could cry," or "We're so homesick we could cry." So I think that's getting on his nerves too. And not that you'd ever know it. Ron's such a mellow guy. He's a good sport. All right, y'all. I guess that's it for today. I'm going to keep this somewhat short because I'm uploading from my sister's computer tonight, or my sister's internet tonight, and that will be taking forever. But we will talk. We will talk soon. God bless.